fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice
yeah,
little break.
yeah. I think it's just fine.
Okay.
And then we'll just have to do this,
So that,
and that's the hard.
that.
So we'll try to.
Just come back. Because it looked like it was
Yeah.
better right there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
I wonder if we
That's
could do.
absolutely. Oh, that's a good view there.
Maybe we'll just do. Well, that's too much of the bar, you know. So we'll just have to.
Okay.
I'll just mess with it a little bit, but that I think works.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good. I mean, it's really clear now. I don't know what happens when
You
they.
remembered about the lights. Good
Yes,
on you.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, it did.
See if we can get K's. She said Civic.
Mm-hmm.
You see Civic?
Is it Carter?
Carter Civic presentation.
That's on. How about the change it? There it goes.
Have you ever gone to this Sunday school class?
Never gone
I've
to
always,
Sunday
my mom's
school.
gone a couple times. And we were gonna go as a Sunday school class one time. And I think they did, and Stacy and I couldn't go. I think we were out of town for, work one of those weekends, but they said it was awesome.
Yeah, no, we've gone, it was required when we were in middle school to even go. It was like, that was a
Yeah.
required school thing, so to visit the whole house and everything.
That's cool.
It was required. People don't do that really, but we were required.
You grow up here?
Born and raised.
Oh,
There we go. You need that little.
I'm gonna go get those magazines.
Now, this worked the last time.
Is that right? That's probably what happened. And I'll pull it back a little bit. Perfect right there. That's perfect right there. So let's do this. So I'm gonna minimize that for a second. I think that's about as good as we can get.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
You see the whole screen right there. That's absolutely perfect.
Yep. So we'll just. So when I sit down from speaking and when Kay's done. I think that's about what you get. I think that camera is better than the other one.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah.
Might have been the camera. Now, can you get on YouTube? Do you know that you can get on YouTube?
I mean, he has before. I'll talk to him and see after. So we switch cameras. So I'll tell him today, hey, we switch cameras. How did it look? Are you good with YouTube? If you only can do Facebook Live, then I'll have to talk with Trey and Henry and Red.
That means we got to get a Facebook page, right?
Yeah, I think we have like I don't know the answer to that. I'm not savvy enough to know all that stuff. I mean, like, by design, I don't know anything on social media. I don't want to know what you're doing, and I don't want you to know what I'm doing. Like, I don't care.
So we are live.
Yeah, we're going.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're good.
You okay?
I sent you an email earlier.
Today?
Yeah, but I printed off a hard copy. All this, all I did was go back and look at the previous 2 years. the projects that we've been involved in, because going back to that is a lot. And of course, all of this, I get it, probably all of it printed out. So what we've done in this first sheet is the volunteers that we have in this project. The hours that we reviewed, the action items, what we raised or what we said. I'm assuming that is what we allocated as a club. Right. But don't quote me on that, because all I did was pull those numbers directly from each one of the sheets. So, what is this? Yeah. And then, well, trying to get a better grasp on what we're gonna actually embrace. You saw Natalie said that the library she's cool with that. So, she wants to schedule time to go over and look at the area, although she's familiar with it. I'll get Diane to go over also, and then, then next week,
We won't be here.
right, we'll be somewhere else, but I want to be able to have something to give to people to say, this is what we're looking at, this is where we're looking at. Debbie, former CLCT director, will be willing to come out and dedicate it. There'll be some good PR, I think, and it'll be, a little free library that says the Grand Heritage too. And then we've got all the books that we need to put in.
United Way moved to Sweetland.
Oh, really? Yeah. Thank you for telling me that. Okay. I'm gonna write it on my notes right now.
They decided to go to an outdoor venue.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah. Now, last week, whatever we did didn't work very well as far as
So we've changed the, see, look down here. We've changed the camera back today.
Okay.
So it looks a lot clearer.
All right.
I've been talking with Jake and Clark, and I've told both of them, just bear with us. We're trying to figure out the technology the best we can.
Yeah.
And we've got a few things in place. So I'll move this when Kay starts her
Gotcha.
program. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the complainer. I had.
No, I know. I agree.
Okay.
But we can do what we can do and make the best of it.
You know what a lot of people are doing now is getting the large screen TVs instead of the projector.
Right.
And you just plug the HDMI right into it.
Right.
And that's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I imagine that's going to be a country club expense.
It would be.
Yeah.
It absolutely would be.
But they make TVs that big now.
Yeah. I don't
And
know.
just plug them in
That's
and
right.
go.
Yeah, I know the chamber has one that we've used plenty of times for trainings and stuff. Just
Yeah.
plug that thumb drive into it and away you go.
That makes it a lot easier.
There's less
Yeah. None of this.
variable.
None
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. That's what I thought, Joe. Don't have to worry about it. Yeah, it's an albatross now, isn't it? Last day. The last meeting of August. What does that mean? New program. Your time is up. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's what I was gonna say for next week.
Of course, I walk away with them.
Reiterate that at the end of our meeting. Okay. Barbara still very much does it. Yeah, copy me on it, because if she can't do it, I can do it. Shoot it up, Barbara, and then just. Sure.
And I'll have to sit down.
Yeah, all of mine, everybody's.
And I'm gonna be.
Good to see you again. He's got a birthday for an anniversary. I saw something. I was thinking, he's got a birthday this week. And I was wondering, sometimes you can't find out. We might be getting Colin, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing great. So, let me make sure that it,
Yeah. It's not on the screen. So.
yeah,
Oh, let me get my mask.
I had it up just a
Okay,
second.
good. All right, I'm gonna go see if I drop my.
See if it comes up.
I'll still have.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you should be good now. I'm gonna have to take it down to make sure are you gonna speak there?
I can wherever you want.
So,
If it's easier, I can do it here and sit.
well, so the thing is, the folks online are gonna want to see
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So I'm gonna move this
Okay.
and just put it right here, and then you
Okay.
can speak from wherever you want. They just won't see, they'll hear you,
Okay.
but they'll be able to.
We'll
Okay.
need the microphone.
Yeah, okay, okay.
This is for these two people.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of LaGrange. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Dee Linder. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day and for allowing us to be together. Guide us to do your will. Father, provide your healing hands to those who need comfort and to those who are suffering because of loss of loved ones. God, grant us the spirit to perform service above self for all who need our help. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. And now to introduce our visitors, guest, Cheryl Madden.
Good afternoon. We have two visitors we need to recognize today. When I call your name, please stand. We have Tabitha Coverson. She's the Executive Director of Communities and Schools. She's a guest of Cheryl Maggie and also Penny membership. We have Jan Anstad. She's the guest and wife of Mike Anstad. Welcome. We hope you come and visit us again. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's good to see you all here today. Now for our birthdays and anniversaries. Remember birthdays. On August 29th is John Harrell. August 27th is Kevin Henderson. And August 28th, Henry Jacobs. So happy birthday to y'all. Member anniversaries, Jake Jones on August 25th, 17 years. Dancing with the Thread champion, Jake Jones. On the 20. He wants to demonstrate. Yeah. I thought that was a program. On the 28th, Jerry Scarborough, 8 years. And on the 29th of August, Chunk Newman, 37 years. And 37 years of perfect attendance. Wedding anniversaries, Ken and Marcy Miles on the 26th have been married 32 years. And Megan and Trip Penn on the 27th have been married 27 years. So congratulations to y'all. Club announcements. Please remember to silence your cell phones. And next week, remember, we will not meet in here. We will meet for the United Way. Patty, you want to make a quick announcement?
We had our board meeting last Thursday, and as you know, we were planning to have our kickoff at Delavant next week at 12 o'clock. When you have the CEO of the hospital and the chairman of the Tripp County Board of Health on your board, and you ask them what their opinion is, you need to heed that opinion. So we will be moving our kickoff to the big tent at Sweetland. We're gonna have box lunches, we're gonna socially distance, we're gonna do everything we can to not only make it as safe, but as fun as possible. And I do need reservations for those of you who are new in Rotary. Rotary pays you, your lunch is covered with your dues, and so Rotary pays for you to attend the United Way kickoff, but we need to know how many people to plan for. So I'm gonna have Barbara send out an email this afternoon, and if you will send me an email with your reservations by Friday, that will be great. As I said, it's gonna be outside. I know it'll be hot, dress casually, but we're doing the best we can to keep everybody safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Patty. And then I also wanted to remind everybody that on September 30th, the Boy Scouts are having a dinner to honor Spear Burdette, and Rotary is hosting the table. So we've had a couple of people say they want to participate in that. Let me know if you're interested in joining that table. We have 7 seats for that event. Happy Dollars, we do have a couple minutes for Happy Dollars. I want to start, I got a couple things real quick. I used to do icebreakers like in meetings, and you know how you ask people to tell a little bit something about themselves. I ended up asking people, tell me just one word, Beatles or Stones. Beatles or Stones. That kind of let me know who I'm dealing with, until I came across a lady in South Georgia and she didn't want to answer that question. And I just kept pushing her, just pick one. Well, I found out that she was she grew up in a fundamental Christian church and wasn't allowed to listen to music at all. And I never asked anybody again, Beatles or Stones. But here's $1 for Charlie Watts, the drummer for the Stones, who passed away yesterday. And then I have $5 that I want to put in honor of Mike Angstadt. Today is the last day of August of his 2-year run as our programs director. He's done a great job. The weirdest time that we've ever been through, and you did it fantastically. You got some stuff that we never would have seen if we didn't have to do it the way we did it. So thank you very much. And I know next week, September, good for you. I know you're glad for that. Anybody else?
I've got 2 Happy Dollars. One comes with the conditions. First one's to Jake Jones. Congratulations, Anthem Star. The second one is for Brian Schumer, who also was in Dancing for the Thread, but only if he will read the text he got from a student.
Nick just got me in the hospital. So I got a note here from a 3rd grader at Hillcrest today. Teachers having them write me letters. First paragraph's about thanking me for what I do and getting them new Chromebooks and all that stuff. Thank you for free breakfast and lunch. I like the Lunch Buddy program. Last paragraph says, on the other hand, I saw you on Dancing for the Thread. You did good, but I think you should stick to being a superintendent.
Got $1 here in honor of our friend, colleague, and this came into, and also to let you all know, mark your calendars. The library is going to be sponsoring and hosting our first Books and Brew at Wildwood. And the presentation that Kay gives will be different on the 30th, but I'll share more about that as we get closer. We're trying to answer the eternal question, what goes best with books? Anybody know the answer? Come the 30th and you'll find out.
And I want to give a plug for another project. This Saturday night, or Friday night and Saturday night, LSPA is hosting the Southern Film Festival. And on Saturday night, their 1 hour documentary based on the President in our midst, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, will be shown at LSPA at 7 p.m. And assuming it's not raining, one of the real stars of the show, which is Taylor Merrill's 1938 Packard, will be there too. So it was great last year in the midst of COVID. We were working on this documentary and we thought, we really need a car that would be like something Roosevelt would have driven. Let me call Taylor and see if he knows somebody. And of course, Taylor not only knew somebody, he had the beautiful car. But I do hope to see you and come out and support LSPA on Saturday.
All right, well, then I will pass it over to Dee to introduce our program today.
We've got a great program today. We have Kay Minshew, who is an author, a historian, and an archivist. She was born in Haywood County, North Carolina, and earned degrees from University of North Carolina, both in Asheville and in Chapel Hill. She served as the executive director of the Troup County Historical Society from 1985 until 2015, and she's received many archival honors, including being listed as a noteworthy archivist in the Marquis Who's Who. That's a list which was established in 1898, so over 120 years ago. She also received the ARMA International Christine Zanatti Award for exceptional contributions in the field of literature for records and information management. In 2010, she testified before Congress about the National Historical Records and Publications Commission, whose mission is to promote the preservation and the use of America's documentary heritage, essential to understanding our democracy, history, and culture. She joined this Rotary Club in 1992, and she served as club president 2002-2003. She has authored and co-authored several books, including Troup County, which was published in 2007, LaGrange, published in 2011, Managing Local Government Archives, published in 2016, and that resulted in her Zanatti Award. Kay was chosen as the Georgia Author of the Year Award for History in 2017 for her book, A President in Our Midst, Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Georgia. A 1 hour documentary based on her FDR book will air on Georgia Public Television on Tuesday, September 21st. Everybody write that down. Tuesday, September 21st. Today, she's going to tell us about her newest book, Jimmy Carter, Citizen of the South, which was published by the University of Georgia earlier this spring. All of her books are now available on Amazon. Let's welcome Kay Minshew.
Thank you, Dee. And I'm really delighted to be here and appreciate everybody in this room's support and interest in the topic. Plus, I'm awfully glad that I get to do the talk in person and not over Zoom. So it's nice to see people's faces. And the book is Jimmy Carter, Citizen of the South, UGA Press, and Georgia Humanities. The book is, if you know my FDR book, it's filled with photographs and oral histories, so a similar design. The whole idea for doing this book, my personal book signing for FDR was at the little White House, Memorial Day 2016. I was there most of the day, and it came to me at some point in the day that my next book just needed to be on Carter. Carter spoke there Labor Day 1976 when he was campaigning for president, has been there several other times. And so fortunately, since that time, I pursued this. Jason, are you my fan, or you want me to come over there? We didn't discuss this, so. One thing that became clear fairly soon after I was investigating this, and John was talking about taking students down there, the city or the town of Plains plays such an integral role when you're talking about Carter and understanding him. So really, behind Jimmy and Rosalind, Plains is the next most important character. This is Plains in 1905. Carter's born October 1st, 1924, so his 97th birthday is coming up. Plains in 1924 was much more rooted in the 19th century than in the 20th century. It had dirt roads, railroads were important, Saturday afternoons in town, schools and churches were the center of social life. Next. Here's Jimmy with his mother Lillian and one of his sisters. Jimmy's parents were certainly not traditional. Miss Lillian was a nurse. She had training there in Plains and in America. She was originally from Webster County. She also trained at Grady. And so John's already mentioned my best trivia question. If you listen on Jeopardy or do crossword puzzles, every once in a while you'll get this question: who's the first American president born in a hospital? And it's Jimmy Carter, because his mother worked at Wise Sanitarium. And all of you with children will appreciate this. The doctors thought if Miss Lillian gave birth in the hospital, she would be back to work sooner than if she gave birth at home. So there was a plot to it. Miss Lillian was always much more liberal than her husband. And here's Earl Carter with Jimmy and his two sisters. Who's missing in this picture is Billy. Billy was 13 years younger than Jimmy. But Earl Carter didn't finish high school, which was very typical of a man born at the turn of the century in Georgia. He was a farmer, but he was also an entrepreneur and always doing a lot. And then when Jimmy was 4, they moved out to the farm at Archery, about 3 miles outside of Plains. They don't get electricity here until 1938 with Rural Electrification Administration. Jimmy Carter talks about the day they get electricity as the best day in his life, even beyond the day he married Rosalind or the birth of his kids. So you have to give him credit for being an honest man. Electricity made such a difference. Electricity was out in the cities before then, but not in the counties. And one of my favorite things about the farm. The farm's open to the public for tours. It really is a great tour. There's a desk in the front hallway that they called Mother. They called it Mother because Miss Lillian worked all during his growing up time. They had often African-American nurses or aides there to help raise the children. Miss Lillian would leave them notes on the desk, to the point that they referred to the desk itself as Mother. So I just love that desk. Here's Jimmy and Rosalind and Lillian when Jimmy goes into the Navy. By the time Jimmy was 5, he wanted to go to the Naval Academy. He saw that as his way of paying for college. He had an uncle who was in the Navy in the 1930s. But Jimmy and Rosalind knew each other from about the minute Rosalind was born. Miss Lillian actually helped deliver Rosalind. And so they lived in town. But then Jimmy, you had to get in the Naval Academy in the 40s, you had to be appointed by a congressman. So he gets delayed a couple of times. He goes to Georgia Southwestern in Americas for a year, to Georgia Tech for a year. He always loved Georgia Tech. Then to the Naval Academy. They talk about Rosalind fell in love with Jimmy looking at his Navy photograph. And she was good friends with one of Jimmy's sisters. So they get married in 1946, year after the war is over. Rosalind expects to not look back to planes, that she's going to be gone, she's going to be a career Navy wife. Jimmy's actually working on naval submarines, really the cutting edge for the Navy. And in 1953, his father dies. He dies of pancreatic cancer. And Jimmy comes back, spends a couple weeks or a month there, and realizes how many lives his father has touched. And realizes that he could be in the Navy all his life and not touch as many people, not touch them as directly as his father did. So they end up moving back to Plains. I think there was a good long trip there between Plains and Schenectady, New York, when Rosalind was barely talking to Jimmy because she wasn't ready to move back to Plains. But they moved back to Plains, and their first home is in public housing. It's brand new public housing. That's another trivia question. I think Jimmy Carter's the only president to have lived in public housing. But that was the only available place to live in Plains. So they lived there for a year, and then they lived nearby. In 1960, they built this house on Woodlawn Avenue. You drive by it on the main drag in Plains. It's now valued between $160,000 and $200,000, and that's a former president of the United States living in it. There's a nice, it's gated and protected by Secret Service now. They've added on to it and changed it through the years, but they're still living in that 1960 house. I love this image. Think of Jason, think of all of our Rotary presidents, all the Civic Club presidents you know. Carter comes back to Plains, gets the peanut farm and stable, gets the peanut warehouse going, and does things like joins the Lions Club. He becomes president of the Lions Club, really involved in the community. He's a district governor of Lions Club. So in 1962, he comes downstairs, or he comes out one morning for breakfast in his Sunday clothes, and Rosalind asked him if he has a funeral. He said, no, he's going to declare that he's running for the Georgia State Senate. And he later says he's sort of amazed that he didn't discuss this with Rosalind. He would just declare it. 1962 was a different day and time, but Rosalind said that she welcomed it and she always expected it. Jimmy made use of his Lions Club contacts around the state. He was state senator for 2 terms. In 1966, he loses his run for governor of Georgia. And one other person in that race was Bo Calloway. And Bo Calloway was the Republican candidate. The race ends up getting thrown to the Georgia legislature in Lester Maddox, a famous segregationist, is elected. And Jimmy gets really depressed knowing that the people of Georgia did not elect the best person. But then in 1970, he runs again and he gets elected. That time he runs a little bit more on the segregationist side. He runs against Carl Sanders. Zell Miller, former governor of Georgia, talks about that 1970 race as being one of the nastiest races for governor in the history of Georgia. But he gets to the inauguration in 1971 as governor of Georgia, and he declares that the time for segregation is over, that people need to unite. And this was sort of in the middle of the civil rights movement. That speech, an 11-minute talk, gets him on the cover of Time magazine for the first time. Here he is with his aides in Georgia, and they're getting sworn in. That included Hamilton Jordan there on the far right. Chody Powell, who was his spokesman, was right behind him. These guys, some of them were with him as early as 1966. And Stuart Eisenstadt, who was one of his longtime aides, talked about the aides being so tied to Carter, and that was part of what made him successful. That, as he said, that of the age, they were not only from the South, but of it, going back for generations. And so by 1972, they're having private meetings in the governor's mansion in Georgia, talking about a possible run for president of the United States. And in 1972, Watergate was erupting all around us. Richard Nixon ended up resigning in 1974. And both the Democrats and the Republicans changed some of the rules about primaries, and it made it possible for somebody who was a fairly relatively unknown governor to seek election. And so Carter declares for the presidency in 1974. He does several things that were unheard of, and one of the best of them was the Peanut Brigade. Those were often neighbors from Sumter County, and Susan, I'm sure you knew some of those peanut brigaders. They went off to New Hampshire and elsewhere saying, you know, we know this man, we want you to vote for him. And there's lots of stories of them sort of freezing to death in New Hampshire, as good South Georgians would, asking for the vote. And then also Iowa was another major invasion. Carter goes after the caucus votes in Iowa, and that had never really been done before. So, and he enters every primary, every Democratic primary in the U.S., and that was not typical. But by summer, it was clear he had the nomination. He saw his running mate and decides on Walter Mondale. And Mondale was a senator from Minnesota. He goes down to Plains. I talked to Walter Mondale a couple of years ago on the phone and had a great interview with him and asked him, you know, what was your first trip to Plains like? And he said it wasn't as startling as you might thought, because he grew up in a really small town in Minnesota. So it wasn't the shock that you would have thought, that here they are at the Democratic primary. And as president, well, one impact Walter Mondale makes is he was adamant from the start he was not going to be somebody sitting in his office waiting for the #1 guy to die. So good for him. He wanted to be involved, wanted to be a part of the administration. So he forever changed the role of vice president in the U.S. And so Carter and Mondale have several successes during their terms. They took at least 150 million acres of land in Alaska, conserved them. The most famous success is the Camp David peace accords between Egypt and Israel. That happened largely thanks to his perseverance and persistence. Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin. The Panama Canals returned to the Panamanians during this time. Next slide. Jenny and Rosalind starts taking a more active role for a president's wife. And so this is continued more, but they end up having lunch once a week because she would meet him at the end of every day with this long list of questions and things. She sat in on cabinet meetings. She would sit in the back and just take notes. But the Equal Rights Amendments for women failed under his term and didn't get passed. But next slide. But Carter definitely had tough times during his presidency. The economy was one of the biggest things. They could never get the economy back on track. And then about a year before his term is over, the 52 Americans are taken hostage by Iranian students. If you remember, it was on TV every day. The TV national networks would have countdowns, day 331, etc. The hostages end up getting freed just minutes after Ronald Reagan takes over as president in 1981. And things like the Peanut Brigade was not new and innovative by 1980 campaign. The after Reagan becomes president, it's Carter and Mondale who greet the hostages in Germany. And so then the Carters had to decide what to do, and they debated it a little bit, but decided to go back to planes. And how were they going to make money? The peanut farm had not done well under a trusteeship. They ended up selling it to a national company, and they write their memoirs. And one great note, Rosalind's book outsells Jimmy's book on this. That Carter has written like 39 books. They wrote one book together about the rest of their lives. They agreed that they didn't want to get divorced, so they've never written another book together. So they had totally different writing styles. So, but that's been a major difference. And then as past president, he had one job to do, and that was to establish and fund a presidential library. So he ends up deciding to go with Emory University. He loved James Laney, the president of Emory, and knew that the politics of having a presidential library with the university might be easier at a private school than at a public school. But then he has a vision one night early on that he wanted more than a presidential library. He wanted some kind of a peace center. And so they come up with a concept for the Carter Center, which would mediate problems between countries or between groups. They've also focused on mental health, and that's been more Rosalind's push, and things like fighting disease, river blindness, and a couple of other diseases are almost eradicated from the world thanks to the efforts of the Carter Center. This was the dedication of the Carter Center, like 1986. I went there, Charles Hudson was there representing the Callaway Foundation. That was the first time Reagan was very, very popular. That was the first time I was at a meeting program like that, and there were hecklers in the crowd. It's fairly commonplace now, but it's sort of shocking. So the Carters actually have spent about 1 week a month in the Carter Center. It did until recently. They have a Murphy bed, an apartment there, the family gathers. Habitat for Humanity has been a huge thing with Carter's post-presidency. Carter was not really, he knew that Habitat started in Americas, he knew of it, but Miller and Linda Fuller had started it. Here they are in LaGrange, and they're at Hillside here. I know several of y'all were involved in that. That year, Carter was at 3 different places, LaGrange, Valdosta, and in Alabama. Some years they were in 2 different countries. Every other year was often in a foreign country. It's amazing the amount of publicity that Carter's 1 week with Habitat has gotten through the years. It's generated volunteers, donors, and attention for Habitat. So that's really been amazing. Here's the Nobel Peace Prize. Carter gets it in 2002, like 14 years after Reagan and Sadat get it, for the Camp David Peace Accords. And he gets a call sort of in the middle of the night. Then from Oslo, Norway, a couple months later, he's in Norway. One of the people he thanks is his high school principal, who had told them that one of you, that y'all can do anything, and one of you might even be president one day. So Carter mentions her both at his Nobel reception and when he's sworn in as president. Politics, the Carter family has not started any kind of a trend of electing Carters. Jason Carter was a state senator for a couple of terms in 2010 and 2012. He ran against Nathan Field with his second term but lost. A couple of Carter's sons have run and not been elected. But Carter will comment periodically on politics. He wrote a letter against the voting rights bill that passed the Georgia legislature recently. He really cares about open elections, but for the most part, he stayed out of politics. He's done some fun things that I feel certain a kid growing up in Plains didn't expect, and that was he received 3 different Grammy Awards for spoken word albums based on his books. He made sure that Mercer University gave Greg Allman an honorary doctorate because the Allman brothers were so important in helping raise money and getting Carter elected president in the 1970s. And if you're all right with Allman Brothers, you must be all right. And then in Plains, they've been very active in Plains. Here's the buildings in downtown. They renovated these buildings, and the Carters were real active. The upstairs rooms are the inn and are based on different decades of Carter's life. In 2016, I had the honor to speak at a Chautauqua weekend presentation, and Susan went, and then John Harrell was there too. And the Carters were there, and the Carters were involved the whole weekend. And so they've always been centrally involved in life in Plains. Next, Maranatha Church is one that he's most connected with. They ended up joining this church after the presidency, and it was a new church, sort of an outgrowth from Plains Baptist. And he's done everything from mow grass, and Rosalind's helped empty trash inside and clean, and but he's most famously taught Sunday school. You can go to Sunday school and then you stay for worship and you get your picture made with Carter. I trust some of y'all have been there to Sunday school, even, yeah. So Greg and I went in 2019, and by then you knew that this man in his 90s was not going to be teaching Sunday school forever. And we were originally going to get there at 5 a.m. and we ended up getting there at 12:30 for a 10 a.m. Sunday school class. And we were the first people in the overflow room, but so you can hear me banging my head on the wall. But we ended up sort of getting divided and sitting on rows 2 and 3. Anytime I'm late for church at First Baptist, I think, there was the time that we were 9.5 hours early for Sunday school. So next, Plains High School is now part of the National Park Service Welcome Center for the Museum. It's a great school building. And the family has always been important to Carter. He always stressed the importance of family with elections. He and Rosalind would take the whole family on vacations between Christmas and New Year's, and they really stressed everybody had to be on time for everything. The Carters were paying for it. The one person who didn't have to be on time for everything was Rosalind. That was one of her birthday presents from the former military man an earlier year. Here's Jimmy and Andy Young, and then Tony Loudon, the minister at Maranatha. Carter's got some friends that have been friends since at least the 1970s, if not before. They supported each other. He and Andy Young was mayor of Atlanta in the early 70s when Carter was governor. And then here's Carter, Jimmy and Rosalind walking away from a Habitat build. And very much being a Southerner had its baggage for Carter as he sought national election, that he's continued to be tied to the South. He came back to the South after the presidency. He and Rosalind have led extremely full lives, and they've done things they cared about and been involved in so much. So I have copies of my book for sale here for $35. Check, cash, or credit card is fine. My commercial plug, but I do think even if you know a lot about Carter, you're going to learn some things. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
We got a couple minutes.
Susan.
You did not tell your fun fact from that night, 2016.
You tell it.
That is the only time that she has had the former president of the United States open for her. She was the keynote speaker that night, and he spoke before she did.
And Derek, my niece, spotted him, and I think he was munching peanuts while I was talking, and so it was fortunate I didn't see him eating peanuts, because I would probably have to stop and say, yo, President Carter's munching peanuts while I'm talking.
I got a picture of that.
Oh, we good, yeah. it was a cool moment.
Yeah, I visited Blaine in the school, but then to the church, is he still doing Sunday school?
He's going to Sunday school. He quit teaching Sunday school, I think right before COVID, or maybe right when COVID started. They actually had a chair for him to sit in and such, but I think he finally quit teaching it. His teaching Sunday school was sort of reassuring him, and he was teaching out of the Sunday school books. So, and he did that, and he had started teaching Sunday school maybe back when he was in the Navy. So for years, he was a Sunday school teacher. Anybody else?
Whatever happened to Billy?
Billy, all of his family had tragic stories. I'll definitely talk more about Billy on September 30th when we talk about books and brew, because, you know, Billy Beer is such a great connection. But, yeah, it's too great of a connection.
Come and bring that can.
Yeah, but Carter comes back in 1981. His father died in 1953 of pancreatic cancer. In the course of just the next few years, Billy and both sisters also died of pancreatic cancer, and Miss Lillian dies of breast cancer and maybe bone cancer or something. So the whole family is hit hard by cancer in the 1980s. Jimmy gets cancer just a few years ago, but actually had treatment and has been declared a survivor of it. But the family, you know, in that regard, Carter got to spend more time at home with the family. So definitely we'll talk more. Billy's such a character.
Thank you, Ken, that was fascinating. Did anybody tell you about the planning meetings with Jimmy Carter and the Holman Brothers? That's what I want to hear about, how those meetings, maybe late night meetings.
Well, and partly they happened partly because Hamilton Jordan knew about the Allman Brothers from planning America's high school dances back a few years earlier. So.
And I think this is the first Rotary meeting that the Rolling Stones and the Allman Brothers have ever been mentioned at the same time. So, thank you so much. In honor of your speaking today, we're going to make a donation to polio plus, which is Rotary's initiative to eradicate polio. Thank you, Kay. Remember, next week we will be at Sweetland in the tent. It starts at 11:45. Please email Patty by Friday to make your reservations. We will not be here, but you need to make reservations so that they know how many people are coming, and so that we can pick up your tab for lunch next week. Nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you. It wasn't
All right, Jaja. So I sent Jake a note during it. I said, "Can you see it okay?" He goes, "Yeah, it's going through great." So I think